Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode 168 of the Civil Gore podcast. I am your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. I guess Tim wasn't so sure of anything in his opening statement there.
I almost botched our intro, but I'll keep it just because it was funny.
Yeah, why not? And plus, I have a feeling Tim and I are both exhausted today, so this will be probably for a short episode. It's probably going to be kind of a struggle, I think, to get through it.
Yeah, work's been kind of crazy, but hey, it's almost the Christmas and holiday and Hanukkah season, so we're kicking things off with some Christmas horror tonight.
Yeah, it's one that we both saw a while ago, but we never actually made it into a future episode. So, and that is The Lodge. So we'll talk about that tonight, I guess. And we'll give you warnings now. We'll probably go through spoilers of that. This is a movie, though, if you haven't seen, you may want to pause the episode when we start to discuss it, so you can enjoy it for yourself, because I don't think this is one you want to know too much about going in.
Yeah, definitely this one is one that you're going to want to watch before you hear the episode, because it's almost impossible to talk about this one without spoilers, I think. And this one is definitely one of those, again, slow burn movies that if you know what's going to happen, it's not going to be a good time. So, yeah, you definitely want to watch that one first. And it is available still on Shudder, right?
Hulu, actually.
Hulu,
yeah.
That's it. That's right, Hulu. Okay, so let's get right into things with our first chop. All right, Brian. So I've been watching actually a lot of small town monsters documentaries. Those are the documentaries. A lot of them are on Amazon Prime. I think I found all but two of the ones they've done are on Amazon Prime. And this is a studio that does short, some are not so short. Some are feature-length documentaries on various cryptids.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of those too. Actually, it's funny. They're all, it's all really good. We just watched the brand new one, which we won't go into too much detail yet because we may talk about more about it on a future episode. But of course, the Mark of the Bell Witch was the latest one in there, and that was a little diversion from a cryptid into a different type of legend. But I'll tell you, this style of these are fantastic because this thing almost is like cinematic, the way the documentaries are and the way the reenactments are. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is some of the best credits to a documentary I've ever seen. It makes you think you're watching almost like a cinematic feature of fiction, but it's really it's a documentary, and it's just so well done. All of them are so well done. The only one I think that differs from the path is the Momo one, which they went with the mockumentary one, which is a little different, but other than that, they're pretty. They're interesting. Like I think it started with the Minerva monster was the first one in the series, and they have some good ones there. And they go through like some more a lot of lesser known cryptids, like very localized.
Yeah, that's the ones I actually enjoy the most. Is the ones that were about like the Flathead monster or whatever, or Encounter, where I didn't know much about that one, or the Beast of Bray Road. I didn't know much about that one. And those are actually kind of the most entertaining to me. But one thing I really liked about them is that the filmmaker does not put like a heavy agenda. You see a lot of these paranormal shows or something that's it's kind of like set out to make you believe that it's one way or make you believe it's not the other way. I love how the Small Town Monster series just basically present the stories. They present interviews with the people that were closest to it. And they don't really try to push you to believe one way or the other, and I really like that about them.
Yeah, it's got it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the style is that they do, but because if you think about it, the bare bones, if you strip it down, it is like any other kind of documentary where they'll have a little reenactment in there, they'll have some historians, they'll have some voiceovers, but there's something about these that. I can't put my finger on it, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe that there is no slant towards either side of it. of like, are they trying to, like there's some documentaries will go out there mostly to disprove this. Mostly, then there's some that want you to really believe it. This one kind of just gives you the facts in a really exciting and interesting way. So you can come out there, you can go in and come out with your own opinion completely. And I think that's what's good. Like the one I really loved is the Terror in the Skies one, because I didn't know much about that. And it was just really cool. And just the visuals and the cinematography of these documentaries are really good. Like I said, I mean, cinematic is the best way to put it. I mean, there's a lot of these great sweeping shots that you'd find in a fictional piece of work. But yet they put it into the documentary, which I think is just fantastic.
Yeah, really good. The other thing, me and Olivia just finished up The Haunting of Bly Manor.
I love that. I'm glad you did it, so now we could talk a little about it, because I couldn't say anything to you about it, other than that the little girl reminded me of your daughter.
Yeah, well,
like a British version of your daughter.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as Hill House, because it's really not that scary. It's more of a love story.
Well, and they say that right there. So you're it's not that they try and hide it from you.
No,
I
they
think
don't.
It's
to their credit,
you think
they
it's
don't.
going to be, yeah.
But I was hoping for a little more of the kind of the Hill House, more horror-y vibe, and it really is not. But it's still entertaining. Like, we really, really liked it, and it's got some interesting episodes I'm not going into any spoilers, but there's some episodes that by themselves are presented in a different format than the rest of the series. That's really, really interesting. I thought it was really cool.
I love this group though, right? Like, Mike Flanagan's got his peeps. Like Kate Siegel is, he's married to, so of course, she's appearing in a lot of it, and of course Victoria Pedretti is just, I'll watch anything she's in. She's just absolutely incredible. And Henry Thomas, it's so funny because our generation, like, we will never not know him as E.T.
Yeah.
But, he's really fleshed out a good horror cred now with some of the stuff he's in. I mean, especially, he was, in Gerald's Game he was in. Mm-hmm. He was in, of course, he played Norman Bates, actually, a young Norman Bates.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
So he's got some iconic horror in here. And so Oliver Jackson Cohen, he's another fantastic actor. They just, this group is like, I just want them to do everything. Like, it's like, I want them
just
to
do
be
every
in a
series.
Million things. But, and then, but they also had to, I hate saying that too, because I don't want to take away some of the new additions to the cast. Of course, like Amelia Eve, who I think is fantastic. She played Jamie. And then Tania Miller and Raul Coley, because there was some new people that came into the group that you were used to from Hill House, and they just like elevated it. So
yeah,
and of course Carla Gugino. I can't forget Carla Gugino.
Mick Garris on his podcast Postmortem, which is an excellent podcast, by the way. Mick Garris does. Who
we're no threat to, remember?
No, we're no threat to Mick Garris' podcast, which we told him at New Jersey HorrorCon, but he is the super nicest guy.
Yes.
And I started listening to his podcast after we met him because I was just so impressed with him. But he had a recent interview. I can't remember who he was talking to, but he was talking about Henry Thomas when Henry Thomas played Norman Bates. And he was talking about what a fantastic actor in person he was. So that even made me love him even more. And in Bly Manor, he's phenomenal. He plays like this grumpy British dude, which is like as far away from what I ever have pictured Henry Thomas as I could ever imagine. And he does a really good job with it.
I don't think he gets enough, even though, he gets acclaim for these roles. I don't think he gets enough credit, like, just in the world.
No, he's an incredible actor. And I don't think it doesn't feel like he's ever reached like star status or anything, he's always been kind of, it's the grown-up Elliot. He's kind of been saddled with that, even though he's done some fantastic stuff. He's never reached like superstar. He's never been like a lead movie star kind of guy. But
he should. He
should be. He absolutely could if he wanted to. He's a great actor.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to forget. Of course, the amazing Alex Esso is in there as well in that series. And then here's a funny little tidbit. Do you know who makes an appearance in that series? Is Greg Sestero, who of course was Dave Franco, who played in the Disaster Artist. That's like the
Yeah.
Tommy Wiseau's buddy there. So to see him in a real move thing is kind of funny. That's not a Tommy Wiseau vehicle, but
the other thing I got a chance to watch was the nights before Christmas.
I still need to watch that.
Yeah, this was a screener that one of our good Twitter buddies, Paul Tanter, was kind enough to send over. And this is a holiday movie about basically a killer Santa Claus, but not in the way you think. There is an insane person that committed this horrible massacre many years before, as you find out early in the film. And he has taken on the persona of Santa Claus. And he's got a female partner in crime who has taken over the persona of Mrs. Claus. And they escape and are trying to track down and kill all the remaining survivors of this original massacre.
Oh, cool!
And so it's kind of an interesting premise.
Yeah.
And they're on the hunt for them is this female FBI agent. And I only pointed out the fact that she was female because she reminded me a lot of the Clarice Starling character in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, cool.
So I really, really like that aspect of it.
Maybe an homage there.
Yeah. It's very entertaining. It's got some super gory, rough kills, which I really, really liked. And the only criticism I could maybe say is some of the acting was a little uneven, but some of the performances were really, really good. So I'll leave you, the viewer, to figure out which is which. But that's the only criticism I had. Overall, I really, really liked it. Now, I will say this. The female character, let me look up her name. Well, she is credited as Mrs. Claus. She had a huge Harley Quinn vibe going on, like huge. And I don't know if it's because I have been binging Batman comics lately because I signed back up for DC Universe.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I've been like reading the heck out of Batman comics, and then me and Joshua have been playing Lego DC Villains on Xbox. So I've got like Harley Quinn on the brain right now. So maybe that's just my perception going too far into it. But that was a little distracting to me because she was very Harley Quinn-esque. But overall, give this one a shot. This one's a pretty cool premise. And Simon Phillips, who plays Santa Claus, is freaking awesome. I mean, the villain in this is really, really good. Like I like the persona they did. They didn't try to do like a...
Is he better than the Hangman?
Yeah, I mean, he really is. Like this is not like Santa Claus was trying to be real. Like he doesn't look like Santa Claus. He just dresses like him, so he's not trying to be like a evil Santa Claus. He's just kind of taking on that persona, and there's some other things I won't even spoil. I guess you can see him on the poster, but he's got some disfigurements and stuff that make him really, really cool. And I love this character, and I'm hoping there's more films in this series because I think it's set up that it could be, because I'd really like to see him back again. He was really, really cool.
Nice.
So, check that one out. The Nights Before Christmas. I think it comes out, by the time you guys are hearing this, it'll be out.
Oh, cool.
I believe it comes out on the 6th.
Nice.
And that's about it for me from the horror front. Those two kind of took up a lot of my time. And like I said, reading a bunch of Batman comics, but you don't want to hear about that.
Yeah, well, Bly Manor's like 9 hours, so yeah.
Yeah.
So me, I have to pause my Amityville project because I hit one of those spots where I have to get Amityville Death House, and it is available on DVD to order, but it's like it's closer. It's like $18. I'm trying to see if I can get a cheaper deal for like probably a one-time watch, and I don't want to just buy it on DVD if it ever comes out on Blu-ray, because I do eventually want to own, as crazy as it sounds, all the Amityvilles on Blu-ray, but I don't want to. It's like I don't want to put them build like a second thing to the monolith for that. It's like I don't want like a shady DVD in there just for that reason. Speaking of the monolith, did you see that thing where there's these monoliths that are appearing and now disappearing? Yeah. So I shared that to it. I'm like, that is not Tim and I. We have our own monoliths. We don't need to take others. But I like to see that monolith is trending now, like big time.
Yeah.
People now, when we talk about it, they're gonna think it has something to do with us. But yeah. So I didn't get to do that. Get my Amityville project going again, which I will pick up as soon as I get a hold of this movie, because the rest I think are smooth sailing. They're all on digital. is I started reading Ready Player 2, of course, by Ernest Cline, which Ready Player 1 was one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I'm not a big reader, but that Ready Player 1, I remember when Steve Cohn, he was like, you got to read this book. You gotta read this. This will be the biggest, like, I think he said one of your favorite books ever, and he was dead on. I mean, just the references alone are like, and it's funny. He said today, some people criticize these books as like being like almost like a Mad Lib, but you know what? I don't care. Like Cohn said it too. I'm quoting him. He said, like, I don't care. This is my childhood, and I agree. I love it. Every time I see a reference, I get giddy reading it. You know?
Yeah. I didn't ever understand that criticism either, because that's what the book was. I mean, you either get that pop culture aesthetic that he was going for, that just spewing nostalgia, and embrace it, or you're just not the target audience. In my opinion.
And it's the theme of the book. It's his books are like, these books are a love letter to all the stuff that we grew up with and loved. But what he does is he entangle it in an incredible adventure tale, and everything that. Granted, the movie, I love the movie, even though I love the book way more. I think if anyone could take that on, Spielberg took it on, of course. And it was in good hands with it. But when I was reading that book, I'm like, as much as I want this into a movie, there's no way they will able to do it the rights alone. But also, you can't capture all of that on film, what you can capture in the book like that. And, the movie was drastically different in a lot of ways. As for horror fans, though, it kind of, like, added to it, the movie. Had a little more horror elements in it than the thing in there, which was kind of fun. But yeah, so, if you were a fan of the first book, the second book, I'm, like, in. And it's, it's like, it's at the point now where it's like, I hate having to stop to do anything else. Because it's getting that good. And I'm like, shoot. It's like, literally, I'm thinking of, like, almost stopping it until this weekend, carving a few hours and just going through the rest of it. It's because it's that good. I didn't think, I knew there would be a sequel eventually. I wasn't sure which way it was going to go. The way it is going, though, I absolutely love it. I obviously do not want to say a word because I know Cone is a little behind in me. I know you haven't started it yet, but I know you will. And I'm sure, it's still relatively new. It only came out last week. I know a lot of our listeners, if they're readers of that series, they probably are still early on as well. But I'm telling you, it's just got everything you loved about the first one is being packed into the second one as well. And there's even a little more updated references, closer to like some 90s, 2000 references, which is cool. It's just Ernest Cline is like I don't think there could be a bigger writer for me out there.
Well, I don't usually buy brand new books, pay full retail price because I typically, there's so much out there to read that I haven't read that I can usually get by with. Well, I've gotten more than enough books in my backlog now that I've just bought for $2 here, $3 there on Kindle sales. But this one I may just have to break down and get this one, because that was, like you said, was one of my favorite books I've read in years.
Yeah,
and probably one of my favorite books I've read since I became an adult, because I have a lot of books from my like adolescent years that I really, really love.
True. Yeah, I have a lot of those too. Imagine reading that back then, but it wouldn't have worked back then because we were living it then.
That's right. Yeah. You have to have that perception from the future to really embrace that nostalgia. But I'm glad to hear that it's really good, because I definitely want to pick that one up.
Oh yeah, you'll love it. You will absolutely love it. And it's just like one of those things where it's like like the same reason you love the first one, you're gonna love this one, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like
All right, so I'm gonna do a rare live beer tasting on air.
Uh-oh.
All right, this is because we're getting into the Christmas season, so I'm starting to break out some of the more seasonal.
Yeah, no, I gotta go out and get some Mad Elf. I haven't had.
Yeah,
that.
Now this one's not strictly seasonal in terms of like holiday, but it is a caramel and coconut cream ale, so I figure it kind of counts because it's kind of a sweet. So this is by a brewery I've never had before, Rail Walk, out of Salisbury, North Carolina.
Oh, I never heard of that one.
I've never heard of this one, so we will.
I do love a good cream ale every now and then, though.
Ooh, whoa, wow, that's really good.
Nice.
Really good. I mean, talk about being able to definitely have the caramel and coconut punch you in the face.
Nice.
I'm a fan. I like it. I like that one. So yeah, if you can find that one, that's probably a very local one. Rail walk from Salisbury, but interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that brewery. That's
Yeah,
really
if we
good.
can ever travel again, I'll have to drive down there, visit you, and grab some again.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I guess it's time to get into our feature film now. I will a caveat, Brian. I did not rewatch this movie for the podcast, which I usually do. I like to be fresh. You know, I like to watch the movie. I could not bring myself to watch this one again. And not because it was bad, because I actually really liked this one when I first watched it.
Yeah.
But it is a very dark movie.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't, I was not in the mindset to handle this movie again today. I just couldn't do it.
This gave me a lot of emotions to it, like from like, oh, that's cool, to anger, to frustration, to sadness. You know, there was just a lot going on in this movie, and I swear to God, this thing has got more red herrings and fake outs at some level than like 9 movies combined. I swear, it's like, you know, it almost like teases you on certain things it wants to do and what they want you to think it is, and then it's nothing like that at all.
I'm gonna do something a little bit interesting with this episode, because we haven't done this in a long time, Brian. That is kind of go through a movie step by step.
Yeah, I think you have to with this one.
Yeah, this one is so, like, I don't know how you talk about it in broad terms.
You can't. I don't think you really can. Because people, you know what? People won't understand what you're saying if they haven't seen it. You know, huh?
Exactly. But at the same time, I think it almost works better to discuss it as a point by point playthrough of the movie. I mean, not to, like, ridiculous detail like Kim and Ket did on their episode for the launch. Yeah. But we will
that's their thing. I like, you know, and it's funny because listening through it, as they like to say, through our ear balls out of I forget their term, but yeah, they're listening to them do it. It was so funny. I was like, oh my God. I remember when they did, I messaged Kim right away. I'm like, did you get this kind of thing? I can't believe, and she was like, oh my God. We're going back and forth with this because, like, at that point, I don't think you had seen it yet. And I'm like, I need to talk to somebody about this thing.
Yeah. And I had just listened, actually, I'm kind of working my way through the Kim and Ket backlog, and I just listened to that epised like recently. And then when I realized that we were doing the film this week, I was like, oh man, this is great.
So you kind of saw it again.
I kind of saw it through my earballs. So
yeah.
All right, well, let's go through the stats here. The movie is The Lodge from 2019, directed by, and I'm gonna butcher some names. I'm gonna tell you right up front.
Yeah.
Severin, Fiala, and Veronika Franz.
I think you got that pretty right.
Now this one I'm gonna really butcher. Starring Riley Keough.
I looked it up this time because I didn't know if it was. I used to call her Keough, and then I thought it was Cuff, and then but no, it's Keough.
Okay, Keough. Okay, Riley
almost like
Keough.
keyhole, but without the other consonants in there. It's a Keough.
All right, so Riley Keough as Grace, Jaden Martell as Aiden Hall, Leah McHugh as Mia Hall, Richard Armitage as Richard Hall, and Alicia Silverstone back on the silver screen as Lauren Hall.
And and you forgot the Salisbury steak as the dining hall. No, sorry.
Wow.
I didn't think there was going to be many good ones.
That was bad even for this episode.
I know, that was bad for. Yeah, I apologize. You know what? Let's just edit that one. No, leave it in there. It's terrible. But okay.
A soon-to-be stepmom is snowed in with her fiance's 2 children at a remote holiday village. Just as relations begin to thaw, between the trio, some strange and frightening events take place. So,
but do they?
But yeah, oh my God. Okay, let's kick things off. So, Alicia Silverstone plays Laura Hall, and she's been separated from her husband Richard.
She's almost unrecognizable, I have to say.
She really is.
She's usually, you're used to her in you've seen her in serious things, but there's this almost like a slight whimsy in all her roles. In this, it's so dead serious, and she just brings it up to a new level that I did not recognize it the first time I saw it.
Yeah, but which good for her. I'm glad she's doing roles like this, even though it's a small role. I thought it was great. But anyway, she's separated from her husband. Her husband says he's going to marry. He's been having an affair, they're separated, but he's going to marry Grace Marshall, who is Riley Keough's character. And this is right up my alley because this is a cult movie. essentially. So he's going to marry this woman that was raised in a fundamentalist Christian cult. And poor Alicia Silverstone commits suicide.
And that kind of comes out of nowhere the first time you see it. I mean, they do some little clues of like a setup, but like then she just like, it's so fast, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of those it's one of those things where you go, oh, so this is going to be that kind of movie.
Yeah.
Because there is no humor in this movie whatsoever.
Nope.
It is so dark. So
it's not even accidental humor, you know. Usually there's like, you know, that nervous chuckle you get. There's no nervous chuckle spots in this.
No, not at all. So this, of course, devastates Grace and Richard, who decide to. This is a little bit later at Thanksgiving, which is part of the reason we chose this movie, because it is a holiday movie.
Yeah,
not a warm family.
Happy
classic.
Holidays. Well, I mean, it's like a holiday movie for 2020, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Just a year late. A year early. Sorry, a year early this came out.
So they decide they're going to go to this remote cabin and spend Christmas together. This was in Massachusetts, I think. And the kids get to know each other, because he's got a son who's played by the kid Jaden Lieber from It, which you would recognize from It, who's fantastic. I like him. And Leah McHugh, who is the younger daughter. So the idea for Richard is, let's get everybody together after your mom committed suicide.
Yeah. And
let everybody get to know each other.
Yeah, remotely, where you can't go anywhere. And then, oh, by the way, I'm working, so you guys enjoy.
Yeah, that is what troubled me probably the most about this movie when I first saw it. Was like, okay, so let me get this straight. He's basically split up with the kid's mom to marry this weird cult lady.
Who they blame for this, mind you. Remember, the kids are very angry at their father, but more angry at poor Grace, who really has done nothing wrong at this point.
Right.
You know, there's nothing she did wrong. In fact, you know, she seems to be very understanding, like where she's supposed to meet them at Thanksgiving, and the kids don't want her there, so you basically you don't hear it for words, but by the interesting choice of visuals that I actually liked the way they did it, where they just showed her empty chair, she like basically was, you know, he sent her home. He basically was probably telling her like, look, this is not a good time. I'm sorry, but you know, maybe they'll bit later on be more accepting, kind of thing. And so she wasn't even allowed at Thanksgiving.
That's an important note, because even though she was as we find out, she was part of this cult and raised up in this cult, she is not a bad person by any means. Like, she is super, like, she is devastated by the death.
Yeah.
So as well, she's, like Brian said, she's kind of an innocent in all this. I mean, she didn't ask to be kind of caught up in this. Yeah.
No. The one thing I will ask is why they obviously know the thing of Thanksgiving, because they have all those inflatable turkeys all hanging around, but yet they're having like lasagna.
Well, you can't just have turkey all the time, I guess.
Well, no, I get that, but like you know, I've seen like pasta served at Thanksgiving, like as a side or an addition, but like, why is like they're not even having turkey at all?
They're probably like my kids
to decorate.
They don't eat
turkey.
There's only certain things they eat.
Well, it's amazing actually they stomached anything down. I mean, they're still very moody children at this point.
But anyway,
you know, understandably so. I mean, after what happened, but
for the fact that he's got to go work and he's going to leave his kids with this woman, just blew my mind. Like, oh my god, it was so awkward and cringy.
Especially because it's not like it's in a town where there's like a neighbor. It's like in the middle of I don't even know where the town is. It's in the middle of a sheet of ice. Where is this place?
Yeah, like, I mean, if I was going to do that, I would never do that, for starters. But if I was going to do that, I would at least make sure there's like a movie theater nearby, some restaurant, something that y'all can go break the ice at, versus being holed up in an isolated cabin in the middle of a blizzard. Oh, that bothered me.
Well, and I'll tell you too an example. Now, granted, you know, when my parents got divorced, it was first my dad had gotten together with my stepmom, and you know, like I probably was, you know, I was young enough. I was probably a little bit like, you know, a little bit kind of maybe bitter towards her. But so my dad, I remember though, when he would go at work, she would take me to the movies, you know, to get to know me, and to lunch, not to an isolated snow lodge where there's no one around. You know, it's little baby steps. That father is kind of an idiot, I have to say.
Yeah.
He's an idiot. I mean, he obviously does, like, read the room, dude, okay? Your kids just threw out a Thanksgiving, but now you expect to spend the whole Christmas alone?
So
I mean,
the kids are all openly hostile towards her from the start. And we know this is going to be bad. The first kind of weird thing that happens is Grace wakes up one morning to find that all of her stuff is gone. Like, everything she owns is gone.
Well, first she falls through the ice, too. This poor girl, she can't catch a break. She falls through the ice. They're being, like, kind of just rude to her the whole way. And I feel so bad because she, like, has, like, the little gifts for them and everything. Like, she's really thoughtful. She's trying. She wants to make this work. And I feel so bad. The room she goes in, the first thing to do is just a picture of the husband and the mother that killed herself. She's got to, like, put that picture away. It's like she's just not. She doesn't really have, like, she really comes into this pretty bad, with bad luck.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the pictures, because the cabin has, like, all this weird religious stuff in it, like Catholic stuff, which is triggering her because she's thinking back to her cult days where she was raised. And I believe the cult was like a suicide cult, and she was one of the few
she was the only one. No, the only survivor. Yeah, it was her, and it was her. I think it was her dad that had the cult. It was, and they said they based it off of, the Heaven's Gate cult.
Which that documentary comes out as we're recording. It comes out tomorrow, December 3rd, on HBO Max. I cannot wait. Yeah,
that's gonna be. I know Tim's tired of his sex cults. He needs to move on to this one. Not that Tim's into sex cults. I want to clarify that he likes watching the documentaries.
But I told Steve Cohn that we were, when it comes to cults, I need either suicide or aliens, and Heaven's Gate has both. So
yeah,
it's like
you're right. Yeah,
cult.
Yeah. Tim's got his like nice cup of tea and and a nice crumpet for this one.
So anyway, so she wakes up. She can't find any of her stuff, and this is where we first get the inkling that something weird is going on. Now, Brian, I know if you're like me, at this point, I thought something supernatural was happening.
Yes, and that's exactly, I don't care what anyone says, that's exactly what everybody thought. That's what they wanted you to think. They wanted you to think there was some weird parallel with the dollhouse they kept showing, or that the mom was coming back, or that whatever, like the cult was coming back. Basically that is where this movie wanted you to go, and
I will say I like that. I like that. I like that they pulled off that misdirection, because they caught me hook, line, and sinker with that.
Yeah, they did, and I was like, and then what we see where I got like the and I think that's where I said frustration comes, because there's so many times like I'm not as good as we always like to say Olivia and Julie are figuring out movies, but I usually kind of have an idea by this point in the movie where it's going to go, because most movies either flat out tip it or they just sticking with the thing. But this one zigzags and zigs and zags again.
Yes.
But all around the same thing. And so it keeps like upping the twist. Every time it comes back, it ups it and then goes back the other way. So it's really... And that's where I think my frustration comes from, is that, like, I think I was like, oh, you got me again, you bastards. It's like, I don't like that feeling of being duped twice, but at the same time I respect it and then and appreciate it. So I think that's why that like I remember, I think Kim Burns said when I emailed her or messaged her about that, she goes, oh, so many feelings of this movie.
Well, I think that's why I said that I liked the movie, but yet I didn't want to watch it again.
Yeah,
because when I say I liked it, I think I really respected how it kept me so off guard through the entire movie. I never could figure out exactly what was going on, which was really cool. But at the same time, the movie was so dark, it's not one that I would want to keep revisiting.
And you know what I like? So, well, you know what? I'll save it till we get into the next level of this, because I want to say another reason why what got me frustrated about it.
Okay, but I think we're about to enter that next level.
Yeah,
because it's around this point that we the clocks have advanced to a new date of January 9th, and then Aiden comes to Grace and tells her that he had this dream that there's a gas heater in this cabin, that it malfunctioned, they all suffocated, and that they're all dead. And he basically tells her he thinks they're like they might be in the afterlife right now. Like they might all be dead.
Yeah. And see, that is where I was like, oh, it's going this way. Yes, this is what I want. This is cool. I love these kind of like
they're trapped in purgatory.
They're purgatory and they're dead and you know, maybe so I assumed at this point they were gonna like all kind of figure out the differences and goes on. I mean, but you know what? It's funny, the second time I watch it, there's definitely some it doesn't work as well the second time you watch it once you know the different twists it takes. I will say that because it kind of robs you of that excitement of it because you kind of see, and then you start seeing little like nods to how it's not going to go the way you thought it was the first time. So it definitely wasn't as enjoyable the second time for that reason. Not that it was a bad movie, but that reason.
Yeah, and I'll have to say, even while I was watching it, there was still a little bit of a skeptic in me about where I thought, oh, okay, this is where they're going. They're all dead. They're in purgatory. But part of me was also like, but maybe they're not. And I don't know quite why I thought that, but maybe it was because I was picking up on a few of the clues scattered throughout. But at any rate, I must mention one thing I forgot to mention earlier. Part of the things that was disappeared from Grace's possessions was her psychiatric medicine.
Yes, so which is very important because she like visibly starts to unravel.
Right. So this is the point of the movie where she's really starting to freak out and really starting to wonder if what Aiden's telling her might be true.
And mind you, the kids are well aware of her history and backstory as they've been scouring the internet and their dad's like archives, so to speak, of they know all about her history.
Right.
Going in here. So
she basically attempts to leave the cabin and get to the nearest town and gets lost and turned around and comes back to the cabin only to discover a photograph, which is it was a photo, but it's a newspaper clipping of an article about this carbon monoxide poisoning that killed the whole family. Right. And with including the kids. And this is the point where I was like, well, okay, well then they've got to be in purgatory. Like this has to be true that she found a newspaper clipping of it. And this really like sends her over the edge. She finds her dog died. She finds her dog dead outside. And she's like completely freaking out now. And remember, she's out in the cold in the winter in a cabin. Like they don't have any comforts really out here. So with her kind of psychiatric break at the same time, she's almost on the verge of like not surviving. Like she's in a bad state.
Yeah, eventually she gets even like frostbite on her face a little bit.
Yeah,
she's in bad shape.
The kids, the whole time are fueling this thing like, hey, we're dead. There's one point where Aiden actually hangs himself in the attic, and then like opens his eyes and is like, see, I told you we can't die because we're already dead in the afterlife. And she starts to believe this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, again, we've already told you we're giving spoilers for this whole movie. Turns out the kids have been gaslighting her this entire time.
Yeah.
And how kids this young, this is another thing with the movie, like you have to suspend some disbelief that they could pull this off. I guess Grace was definitely had to have been in such a fragile mental state for this to even be remotely plausible. But the idea that these kids pulled this off was just incredible to me.
Well, the fact that they didn't even come in there twisting my... I mean, think about this. Right? At this point in the film, you were sitting there. You're feeling bad for the kids. Then you're feeling bad for Grace, and you're like, you know what, kids, come on, give her a chance. She didn't cause what happened. I know you're young and stuff, but stop being mean to her. She's being nice to you, kind of thing. Like, I'm not saying, and at this point it was like 6 months, it's like you want to be mad at your dad. I get it a little bit, but what did she really didn't do anything. Cut her some slack. She's trying to help. Then you start feeling bad for all of them because you're like, oh shit, they died. They're all dead here. Oh, this is really sad. Like they, there was such a, like, what bad luck and all this. Then you find out they did this and you're like, you know what, you're back to creepy crap bad kids again, you little bastards. Look what it's like you totally played on this girl so viciously,
And it's not even what really like shocked me was it wasn't just that they played this joke making her think they were dead. They were playing sermons of her dad through speakers at night so that she would have these horrible dreams. They had what was some of the other stuff they did? They the girl was
painting that fell off. Like I think they were knocking the. I don't know if they knocked it off or they loosened the something with the painting kept falling or something.
Yeah, they're the ones that stole all of her possessions. Obviously,
right.
The girl was calling her father the whole time so he wouldn't suspect anything and come back. I mean, this was pure evil what these kids were doing. I mean, really, really evil to a woman who this would play differently if the dad had been like having this affair and or something, or where the lady was really like super culty still and was trying to convert the father. I mean, none of that is true though. This lady was completely innocent. I mean, they were separated. He was, he met this lady. She's trying to overcome the trauma of her past. It's not her fault. She was born into this cult. So none of this stuff is her fault. So these kids just come off as evil pricks. Yeah,
and in fact, the moment that, like, I mean, think about it, like, the one thing that she did, like, that was very powerful for herself, and she says it repeatedly, is that she bought the dog for herself. Like, she goes, I bought this dog for myself. I wanted a dog when I was a kid, and, but obviously her childhood was royally screwed up by this cult. So she had another, and this, she was, like, saying, she goes, I did this for myself. And then these kids were the result. They not only did that, but they were responsible for her dog dying now. The one thing she was so proud of in her life at this point. It's like they caused that. Like, they literally, every little ounce of achievement she did, which was even the smallest is difficult based on, her childhood cult life there, so to speak. They managed to, these little bastards managed to strip it all away and then some, which is just so evil. And, to see the kids, I mean, I get, you hate okay, so start like spitting in her food, like start low. Don't go to like
work
this
your way
level.
Up, yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough he spies on her in the shower, it's like. I mean, so
that was a little creepy, yeah.
He's a perv too, so.
But there is a purpose behind making the kids this unlikable, because when you start hitting the third act of the movie, the kids realize, I mean, after she's gone on this excursion trying to get out of the house, the kids realize they may have gone a little too far, because like this woman's about to die.
Like you think,
Yeah. So finally they wake up and like, oh crap, okay. So then they admit everything to her. This is when we as the viewer find out, okay, for sure, okay, it was the kids doing it this whole time. And they kind of try to kind of walk all this stuff back because they definitely overstepped their bounds. However, she's snapped at this point, and there's no turning back. Like, this is like they have created the monster, and the monster is going to turn on them. And that's that was one cool thing I kind of liked about this movie is at first I didn't like. I resented the fact that the kids were such bastards to this poor woman, but then you kind of get the twist that it's all getting ready to get turned back on them. And I think you have to do that because nobody wants to see kids hurt in a horror movie unless they deserve it. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, even then, but like, and this is like, it's not only that, but they, and I think it's a good choice that they managed it. They showed them like their father getting killed now, it's like, okay, they were mad at their dad too, but now look at the first punishment they get is like, okay, now she just shot their father because she's now like cuckoo's nest, like she's off the deep end. So she thinks they all need to repent now, and she's basically reliving the cult now back in the present.
Yeah, and there was good reason to. I liked how it wasn't like the dad just showed up out of nowhere. There was very purposeful setups where the generator went out, so then their phones went out, so then they couldn't contact the dad. So now the dad's worried, and that's why the dad comes back to the cabin. So there was logical reasons for the way things played out, which I really liked.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when he comes back, Grace shoots him, and now the kids are like, obviously super flipping out. This ends the final shot of the movie, which is really super creepy and dark, and that's where she's got the kids at the dinner table. They're singing a hymn. The father's corpse is even propped up at the dinner table.
Yeah, they propped him up.
And one of the memories she had was these pieces of duct tape with the word sin on them.
Yeah.
That would be placed over the cult members' mouths back when she was growing up with this cult, and she does that to the kids. So the implication being she's going to kill them eventually too.
Yeah.
So it was.
They're next.
Oh my god, it's such a dark premise for a movie because you got number one, you got evil kids, but then you got them like that they're going to be killed. Like it's it's just so. There's absolutely no redeeming feel good. I'm not saying that horror movies should have redeeming feel good qualities necessarily, but man, this one on a list of dark movies I've watched, this one was one of the darkest.
Oh yeah, no, this one, and like again, you can't like as depressing as it is and dark as it is, and how like. Normally I hate when movies just like do all these twists and turns for no reason. This one deliberately did it in a way that like it just works, and because it was done so well. And yeah, I mean, so it's like as much as you like, that's why he's saying like you cannot watch this movie and not come out with at least 3 or 4 different emotions out of it.
Which is, I mean,
whatever they may be, but there's at least 3 or 4. Don't tell me otherwise. You can't go in that like just. Oh, that was a film. No, you don't do that.
Yeah, it definitely puts you through a emotional roller coaster. Now, Brian, one thing I wanted to discuss, I was thinking about this earlier today, one thing I wanted to bring up during this film, it's because Mick Garris mentioned it on his podcast again, and it bothers me, because I kind of agree with him, but then I kind of don't agree with him. And that's, he brought up again the idea of the elevated horror term, and how he hated that term because he said it was disparaging to other movies. And I get his point. I think elevated horror may be just a bad term analogy, but I strongly feel there is a difference between a movie like The Witch or The Lodge and a movie like Critters 3. There's a difference there. I mean, just like there's a difference between The Godfather and Hubie Halloween. Yes. Now, they're both movies
One had Adam Sandler, and that was the difference.
Yeah. No, but, I mean, I really enjoyed Hubie Halloween. When we sit down with the family, we watched it. We absolutely loved it. We watched it 2 or 3 times, actually. Nothing wrong with that movie. It's a silly Adam Sandler holiday romp. Who cares? I absolutely loved it. And guess what? I absolutely love The Godfather, and it's an Oscar-winning film. But nobody can tell me that The Godfather and Hubie Halloween, because they're both movies, are on the same playing field. They're just a different style of movie. So that's what I struggled with. I was like, okay, if we're not going to call movies like Midsummer and The Witch and The Lighthouse and The Lodge, these movies that are slow burn and they're really deep and they're really complex, if we're not going to call those elevated horror, what do we call that?
Because it can't be in, you're right, it can't be in the same class as like even like a Friday the 13th, like,
right. And it's
maybe not the first one, but like, the sequels and stuff, because I mean, it's got to have something to it. I mean, what are you going to like, sure. Like The Witch could be folk horror, but still there's folk horror that is not at the level of The Witch, it's not done artfully.
I just don't know how you are, because, from Mick Garris's point of view, it's, if we say this is elevated horror, then you're basically implying that Critters 3 is non-elevated horror, which I would argue is probably accurate. But
no, and actually, you know why elevated horror is great? Because it's basically like, what? You go into a building, right? Certain people like the lower floors, certain people like the higher floors. You have your choice. You hit the button, whatever you're in the mood for that day, whatever view you want to see from that building. You want to see street level, you want to see the penthouse level. That's why elevated horror is not that bad of a term. It's just that's where people hold it. Now, I know he's looking at it like what you just said, where, well, why? It's not as good as Critters 3? Well, it happens not, of course, Critters 3 happens not to be as good as that. But the thing is, again, you're not expecting it to be. You don't go to watch Critters 3 to have more than one emotion.
Right,
it's like,
yeah. I just don't know how to. If you guys
poor Critters 3, by the way. Well, I don't know how that got.
I don't know. I was thinking of. Yeah, I was like Mick Garris on the brain. He did one of the Critters sequels.
Yeah, I think he did 2, right? I think he did 2.
I think he did 2. But yeah, so I was trying to figure out like what other terminology you could use. And again, when I say, I mean, I've heard movies like The Witch and some of those A24 films called, artsy fartsy. I mean, there's disparaging terms on the upper end too. Like people will disparage them as being like too artsy and highbrow and blah blah blah. And there's a kind of disparaging there. I just don't know how can I classify this style of film versus your run-of-the-mill mainstream kind of popcorn horror and not disparage either class, because I like both classes of movies. I just don't, I struggle with that. If you guys have any ideas out there, shoot us a tweet or a Facebook post or Instagram or something, because I don't know. I haven't done any, I haven't looked around to see what people think of that kind of controversy. It was just a coincidence where I heard that on the Mick Garris podcast, and then we had just decided to do this movie, and it just clicked in my mind. I was like, here we go again. I keep wanting to just say elevated horror, and then Mick Garris is saying, no, don't say that. And I don't want to go against Mick Garris. So I don't know. It's kind of...
Well, listen, we were nice enough to hold back, so we're not a threat to him. At least he can give us that term back.
That's right. I don't know. We need another term. All right. Well, let's go through some of the trivia here. Cult leader Aaron Marshall, the father of Grace in the movie, is played by actress Riley Keough's real-life father, Danny Keough, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, look at that. And here's an interesting... I like this one because it's very noticeable while you're watching it, because... that she's a starring role in it, is that Riley Keough doesn't even appear in this movie until the 21-minute mark. And it's funny to see that she's not there yet, and that's deep into a movie to have a main character not appear yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little interesting note here. Grace, of course, is named Grace because of the religious connotations, but every other main character is named similar or exactly as their real name. So Richard is played by Richard Armitage, Aiden is played by Jaden, and Mia is played by Leah.
That's a little fun name play there.
Yeah.
And here's what we kind of mentioned this earlier, but just to specify, it's that the cult from Grace's past is clearly based on the Heaven's Gate, of which 39 members also committed mass suicide in a communal house with shrouds covering their upper bodies. And they had that in this, where they had that, but they added, I think it's the tape. Yeah. They added the tape and the shrouds in this one.
And then finally, this one, the horror film that Grace and the kids watch in the cabin is John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982, which is kind of a nice little homage to the original Halloween, in which they were watching the that was the original The Thing, right? The
old black and white one. And see, now just so you know, for those who have not seen The Lodge yet and still decided to listen to it, if our horror challenge comes out again with that same criteria of having to watch a movie with a classic horror movie in it, here you go.
Well, speaking of The Thing, I was talking to Joshua. Joshua cannot wait to watch horror movies. Like, he is dying to watch horror movies. And I'm saying, Bud, you're just too young for the ones. I've showed him stuff like Gremlins, and we've watched a few of the more, ones I consider more intro.
Did you see Monster Squad yet?
No, we haven't watched Monster Squad yet. That's one we could probably watch. But he's like ready to jump right into hardcore. And I'm like, no, dude, I can't. I can't in good
I bet he could see. I bet you could probably. You know what? A good transition into the R horror movies are maybe something like a Silver Bullet.
Yeah. I thought about maybe something like that. But I was.
You could probably handle that.
He's playing a game called Among Us. I don't know if you've heard of this. There's a video game called Among Us, and and basically it's you have like this group of little astronauts that are on a spaceship, and one of them is an imposter. And so each round, like, one person's the imposter, and the other ones are trying to figure out who it is, and they're meeting to vote one of them off and all this kind of stuff. So I told Joshua, I said, oh, this reminds me of The Thing. And he was like, what? And I was like, it reminds me of The Thing. So I was telling him the whole story of John Carpenter's The Thing, and he was like flipping out, like, we got to watch that. I'm like, no. No, I cannot let you watch this at all. But he was so excited. He thought that was just the coolest premise. So, yeah. I told him one day we will sit down and watch that movie, and it'll be great. But not yet. Not quite yet.
Yeah, not quite there yet.
All right, Brian. So what do we come up with the beer pairing this week?
So I went with something, actually, it's one of those multi-state breweries, and that's from New Belgium, which is in Fort Collins, Colorado, and Asheville, North Carolina.
Yes, and this is a beer I've actually had.
Yes, me too. I like it, actually. It's called Accumulation, which I thought is perfect because they're stranded there in the winter, and it starts to snow at some point. So It's a white IPA and a direct revolt against the long-standing tradition of brewing dark beers for the winter, which is true because it's funny, once I get towards the winter time and this fall, I love like a thick, heavy stout or a porter or a cream ale. So it's like it's nice that they kind of did that with this one. And it says crafted with Mosaic and Amarillo hop varietals, and a bit of wheat. This IPA will keep your long nights glowing blizzard white, and it's 6.2%, so it's pretty decent. I've had this a number of times. It's not bad. I like New Belgium. They're kind of that tier we were discussing last week. It's like the Sam Adams, like your run of the mill craft beer that's just a little elevated above the others.
Don't call it elevated, Brian. It's just as good as the
other
other
listen,
beers.
Mick Garris only told us we can't use it for movies. We can claim it for beers until he says otherwise.
All right, well, let's get to our triple threat from last week. We had
two
correct.
answers.
David Terry was one of them I knew about.
Both Davids. I think you had to be named David to get this one correct.
And I was surprised because I actually thought this one was harder than I didn't think we'd have anybody.
Well, you know what?
This one.
Once we read it back in the show, I realized it was kind of an easier than I at first thought it was. But I did think it was harder when I was cultivating it. But when you read it back, I was like thinking to myself, I was like, oh. I didn't say it, but I'm like, you know what? I think they might get
not
this
to take
one.
anything away from the two Davids, because
I'm not trying to like take it away because it was still at a level of you still need to know your stuff to get it. I'm thinking like our audience, any horror fans will probably pick it up. Good horror fans will pick it up.
Yeah. So we were looking for a director, and the answer was Ari Aster.
I think the first clue is what automatically gets you on the right path.
That's true.
Like not even though I created this question, coming from this, if I got this right now, I'm trying to separate myself from knowing the answer. Coming that they say this, I go Robert Eggers or Ari Aster right there. I'm right all automatically on these two right now.
That's true.
And then I'll go look at the other clues. So look, but then like you think if you're on one of those two, you just go down their list based off the other one. So.
Yeah, so clue number one, I've had 2 feature films to date, and both were highly acclaimed. And, of course, we're talking about Hereditary and Midsummer. Clue number 2, my IMDb page would reveal that I also wrote all 9 of my directorial credits. So that is true of Ari Aster. He's written all 9 projects he's directed. And he graduated from the American Film Institute, which is clue number 3.
Yeah, so, I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's like once you go, like if you're an up-and-coming horror, that first one automatically puts you on, gives you two great options, and then if you eliminate based off the other clues.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, yeah, so that's where it was when you read it last week, I'm like, oh, shoot. I should have at least done these in a different order, maybe. Maybe that would have made it more challenging.
I think this next question could be on the easier side as well.
Oh, yeah, no, I think this one is very easy. Especially if you know our podcast, I think this one's really easy.
All right, so clue number 1. We're looking for a movie this week. Clue number 1. While this film was intended to be part of a TV show's storyline, one of its main characters was played by a different actress in the series. Clue number 2. I have had several cast members that were also on Seinfeld. And clue number 3. This film was supposed to be one of a trilogy. While this never came to be, the overall story continued many years later.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty. It's like the clues are I think good, but I think it's if you look at the 3 right in a row, I think you'll be able to pick up it.
Yeah,
pick up on it, especially if you know Tim and I.
Yeah. All right, so we had another fantastic horror mailman fan topic food question from our buddy David McHugh. What's something you know now about podcasting that you wish you knew earlier? I've got a very good answer for this one.
Well, yeah, I've got one of the obvious ones. So, I mean, we came into this now, but full transparency, we came into this knowing a lot about podcasting basics because we got so close with Mike and EB, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that gave us, because they were so transparent and they were so open and honest about how their processes went, how, what goes into a podcast, what makes a podcast appealing. And, and then when we actually, asked them ahead of time, like for advice. And, when we became friends with them, we got to know a lot. So I will say going into it, I expected a lot. I mean, now I'll do two things. So there are two, like, now it's funny. One of the positives I didn't expect is that how fast your podcast, I'm not going to use the term elevated, but your podcast can just shift gears. I did not know that going in, because we watched the progression of Mike and EB's podcast, how they kind of started on a higher note to begin with, because I think it was an easier theme parks. It's not like, you're not involving celebrities, you're not involving screeners, you're pretty much everything that comes out, you kind of know. Yes, you get like maybe scoops and you'll get interviews with industry people, but you kind of, everything out there is so fast.
Yeah.
So that's what I didn't expect. Like, I went into this like expecting, like we've said this I think in the last, when we were talking about like just our podcast in general and stuff, like I kind of expected our podcast not to be where it is at this point in only 4 years. I expected it to take a couple of years before we'd get interviews with some industry people and screeners sent all the time, and being really like kind of known out there at social media and stuff. Like, I didn't think that would come so fast. So that's a very pleasant surprise. Now, what I didn't expect is, even though I knew it was going to it's hard work to do a podcast, because I've known, Mike and EB have said it. They've said how, it takes time, and you don't want to get burnt out. And while this is like one of my, no matter how tired I am, like when we start this, I'm like energized, boom, we're into it, and like no matter how stressful the week is, once we do our episode, it's like I'm like everything is forgotten, and and I'm in there. But the one thing, even with all that knowledge, I did not expect how much time it takes. And it's not a negative thing. It's mostly stuff I want to do. Like, I want to watch as much as I can to bring content to the show. I just didn't think how much time that would take, Yeah. I figured it's a movie. I'll watch a couple of movies and then we'll talk about it. But no. There's involved in, now that we have interviews, there's preparing questions and doing research. And, now we get screeners. And so we got to watch, we want to watch those along with our feature movie, and to come up with themes and all that. There's a lot to do, and like sometimes every time if I get some moments, like on a weekend, I'll try and do ahead. Like I got our schedule set for the rest of the year, and sometimes I'll do like 20 triple threats at once, just so I have a bank to pull from.
Oh, the dismemberments take forever too.
Yeah,
you're having
Tim
to look
does
up
all that
films.
work. Yeah, I don't think you guys realize how well. Now, granted, thank you for Cody for helping us a little nice portion of that with the film historians by keeping the log of that, and because that, I can't imagine. I think we dropped that bit years ago at some level, or we just became like everyone would have 5 different impersonations. But so that was great that she started to do that and keep track of those for us. That has a big help. But what Tim does for that, because I know it's like a multi-step process. Because remember when we used to do it week after week, it really dragged the show down. So it was, now that we do that one big episode of it, it makes things so much easier, but it also gives Tim a big load to deal with when he's got to first find all the movies, and he's got to go in and dig through the IMDb pages for descriptions and details, and he's got to go and scour the internet sometimes because it's not all there with the special features, and then we got to find the trailers so we can watch it so we know what the heck we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of work, but yeah. So I don't want to hog the stage. So those are my 2 things. I think one good, one not bad, but one not like one that was like, oh my god, I didn't expect it, but one I was like such a positive on. But
yeah, I'm kind of the same way actually. The negative one is definitely the time. Even though I knew going in, I did not realize how much time editing takes up. Now, granted, over the years, 2 things have happened to help that. Number one, I've just learned so much about editing that I can knock it out way faster than I could originally. Like when we were first doing shows, now granted, our shows were a lot shorter back then.
Yeah.
We would typically had shows under an hour when we first started, but editing a show took forever because I didn't know Audacity. That's what we used to edit the program. I didn't know any of that stuff. And even once you become comfortable with Audacity, there's tricks and things I'm still learning today, even 4 years later, that go, oh my God, that would have saved me so much time. So every time I learn one of those little tricks, it gets better and better. Eventually I'd like to get to some nicer equipment, which would also speed things up.
I want to get that thing Kevin and Amanda have.
Yeah, and they said that. I was talking to Kevin about the Fox and the Foxhound Harry Potter podcast, guys. If you haven't listened to that, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we got some blend over. Cody's in there now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But yeah, they did say moving up to that equipment really cut down their editing time. So I definitely want to explore that. So, I did not expect it. Now, we were aggressive. We went for a weekly podcast, and that's aggressive. I mean, putting a show out each week is a big commitment, and I did not really understand what I was getting into when I did that. That's not to say I don't enjoy it, because obviously I still wouldn't be doing it 4 years later if I didn't enjoy it. But it is a huge time sink. To anybody who's thinking of starting a podcast, that's all I can say. I mean, prepare yourself to spend a lot of time if you want to be a successful podcast. Now, one of the things I committed to early on, and I got this from Jeff Tucker at 91 Reasons, and I'm sure Mike and EB have mentioned it as well, that you have to be consistent. Put out a consistent show every week, and if you can't, for whatever reason, you make sure you let your audience know that there's not going to be a show this week, or you don't just you have to have that consistency. And I think our show has grown as fast as it has because we put out a consistent show, and our format, although we've had changes over time, our format generally stays the same, and people have come to expect the format of the show, and that brings a sense of comfort. I know when I listen to podcasts, some of my regulars, I like knowing, okay, this is the part where they do this, and this is the part where they do this, and I'm not like completely surprised.
Right.
Over time, that just feels comfortable and it's good. That doesn't mean you have to be stale, but it just means that, it gives your listeners, I think listeners of podcasts in particular really like that consistency. And that has really helped our brand grow. But so that was on the, I guess the negative side would be the time sink for me. And on the positive side, we've mentioned it before. I had never in my wildest dreams would I've ever believed we would have met some of the people we met, or talked to, Zoomed with people from Friday the 13th franchise, or talked to Felissa Rose over Skype. Not in my wildest dreams would I've ever imagined we would get anywhere close to that level. I thought if we ever did, that would be, 10 years down the road, maybe. Yeah. Because the horror podcast field is crowded. I'm sure you guys know listening. There's
like a new one every day. Every day I'm finding, because, they'll follow you on social media. So there's a lot out there.
Yeah. And when you have two dudes talking, it's even worse. Because
oh my God.
The two dudes talking podcast are a dime a dozen out there.
Yeah.
So we knew going in, I knew going in, that we were basically inserting ourselves into a completely saturated market. And that, again, is also what I was so surprised that we did get to a position where we have people requesting interviews with us versus us reaching out to them, or we have people sending us screeners unsolicited. That level, I just never in my wildest dreams imagined. And that's one of the things that really keeps us going, that, and particularly the friends we made of the fan base. People have sent us emails, and like the Davids that reach out to us, and Cody on Twitter, and really the super fans have been really helped me get through some times where, there are times where, you have a really horrible work week, and you've got to record, and you don't feel good, and you've got stuff going on, and there's times where you're just like, I just don't want to do this. Like, why? I just don't want to do this. And then, like Brian said, something magical happens. You sit in front of the mic, and all of a sudden you bang out this great episode. So
yeah, you know what I think it is too? It's funny because of what you just said. The people out there that we've known, that we've become friends with. It's like, I've said that, I'm like, well, if we don't release this, like, hey, Cody's gonna get upset if we don't have an episode. The fact that we have, like, that people out there that you don't want to disappoint personally, to me, that keeps me going. That pushes it. That makes me want to, like, try harder and go forward. Now, I knew that that based off, because we were following, the way Coaster Radio does things, and we saw how that community grew. I knew that was definitely something to strive for, and that's something we could probably reach. I didn't think we'd reach it so fast. I mean, yes, do we have like 80 million people we like talk to, or whatever, like on Coaster Radio, that's, with meetups and stuff. But again, remember that took 10 years for them to get that spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe in 6 more years for us, we'll
have a
we'll
meetup,
be
our
at that.
first
We'll
meetup.
have like we'll have a Halloween Horror Nights meetup,
Well, you know what? You kind of, I think part of being a successful podcast too is you kind of have to outlast. You have to do like a kind of survival of the fittest thing, where you kind of have to outlast these podcasts that maybe put out 6 months worth of episodes and then drop off the face of the earth, or you're competing against the new ones that have come out, that are just so brand new that they just don't have any listeners yet. You gotta just persevere and get to that point where people hit your podcast and go, oh my God, these guys have been in business for 5 years. I better check them out, kind of thing. And that really plays into like the interviews and the screeners. I mean, there's perfect examples. We had to give was that one to get an interview? We had to
I think it was
submit
a loan for a loan.
We had to submit a resume for that one almost. Like we had to say, who have you interviewed?
That was the first one because it was part of that Fantasia, and they actually said they're like, here, can you send us a list of this and some clips of this, and I'm like, Tim, I hate to do this to you, but you got to come up, you got to go through the archives and grab some of these clips.
But as we build, we got 4 years of episodes to look back on, and then all those interviews, tons of interviews now in our resume, and that just makes it so much easier the next time. So next time we reach out to get an interview, we can point to our backlog and say, look, guys, we've interviewed Felissa Rose, and we've interviewed Kelly Maroney, and we've interviewed David Howard Thornton, and we've interviewed blah, 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 blah. I mean, just go on down the list. And that's, not name dropping is what you have to do to get some of these interviews and screeners and stuff. And we've kind of hit that point now, that snowball effect where now we're kind of rolling down the hill versus trying to push the boulder up the hill.
Well, yeah, and also, a key is, these a lot of these interviews are set up by publicists, and they talk, they follow. What was it? One interview, was it the loan where they had two of the I think again there were publicists sitting in there.
Yeah.
And then the one for Behind You had that too, where we interviewed them. There was some of the PR people are in there, so they all discuss it. And then there's some PR people that will always every time they have something new reach out to us and ask if they want to set something up. And that's how we found It Cuts Deep was that way, because we had done work with that PR firm before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so word gets out.
Yeah, and so that's why it's always important to, and that's why I will never and I'll always try and anyone reaches out to us, I'm always like, yeah, sure, send it to us, we'll check it out. We try and do as much as possible, because you never know what door will open. And another thing too is you said, we're saturating the market with podcasts, but it's also I think it's always important that I like to do is if I do find a new one that I get to listen to, and I find it, and I'll give them and say, hey, great job, I listened to the episode, try and support other podcasts too, because while the market is saturated, it's still, you never know when you're going to want to check out something new. And so it's I heard a thing, it was actually funny at one of the Coaster Radio meetups, they were, it was the PR person from Magic Mountain was talking about how, in that area, obviously you got Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal, all those different theme parks in that area. And she says, they all kind of have this almost unspoken agreement that they don't mind. They all kind of support each other, because they said rising tides raise all ships. So when one park does good, other parks are going to do good, because you're in the area. Hey, I had a good time. Let me extend my day. What else is in the area, kind of thing. Well, same thing with the horror podcast. It's that's why, we have some that we know better than others and that we become friends with, so we'll support them a lot. But it's also because, it just helps, because the more success, to me, when Kim and Ket announced that they were signing, up with Dread Central, to me, I was like, that's so awesome, because I listened to them from the beginning and I knew they were going to be huge. And it was so good to see that all their hard work has got them to this elevated, I said it again, I can't help that. I like the word. They got to this good status where now they're they're up like that. And and it's just it's good because anytime a good horror podcast is starting to move up, it always helps all the others in ways that you might not see directly, but trust me, it's there, because the more that are out there, the more you have to choose from, and the more that it kind of pushes me to do better, and you to do better. So it's always like it's never a negative thing.
No, yeah. All right, well, we'll be back next week with another holiday themed film. Brian, you want to go ahead and spill the beans on it?
Yeah, it's if you want to watch it ahead of time, because I know David Terry says he likes to watch them before, so we're gonna do the movie. I'm excited because as my people get a movie here, it's Hanukkah, and we have a surprise interview paired with that, which I won't say yet, but
we'll keep that as a surprise.
You'll see that. Yeah, we'll keep that part as a surprise. But yes, we'll be doing a Hanukkah with the great Sid Haig. I was wondering, was that his actual last film, or because I think Hanukkah was filmed a while ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And it just took a while to release, so I think it probably wasn't his actual last film. I think 3 from Hell still gets that.
I've been wanting to watch this one really bad, so I'm really.
I know, I can't wait to watch it. This was killing me. I've had the Blu-ray for like 6 months. I'm like, I know we're gonna do it this year. I'll just wait.
All right, guys.
Just wait.
So we'll see you back here next week. Have a safe and happy holiday season, and we'll see you soon. And stay away from those religious cults.
Yeah, and stop elevating. Okay, no.